All right, folks, it was also a big night for Republicans on the gubernatorial level. There was a major upset. Some folks tweet me saying, no, I wasn't upset at all. In Maryland, Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, many expected him to be the next governor, expected him to be the third African-American elected governor since Reconstruction. He actually lost to Larry Hogan, a Republican. I even got a text last night from a prominent African-American woman who's in politics who said, who hit me up and said early on, Brown's going to lose. She said she was hearing a number of people who are African-American who were crossing party lines. A lot of folks say it was really also a referendum on Governor Martin O'Malley and his policies as well. Also in Florida, wow, talk about spending a ton of money. Rick Scott, who pretty much had a 35% approval rating throughout his entire 4 terms as governor, beats former governor, former Republican, former independent, now Democrat, I don't know what the hell is next, the Green Party, Charlie Crist, wins by about 1% also. That was a tight race. Let's come back to our panel here. We got Jason Johnson joining us from D.C. We got Law and Victoria Burke, Angela Rye, Hogan Gitley. We have Tara Wall. Angela, what was amazing here is the Democratic Governors Association chairman, the governor of Vermont, he couldn't even get 50%. Democrats did get a pickup in Pennsylvania, but again, that was a huge fallout from the Penn State scandal.
Right.
So even on the state level,
right.
When it comes to these governor's mansion, and of course, Greg Abbott just demolished Wendy Davis. Sally Cohn, who CNN contributors, tweeted that she's still, Wendy Davis is still going to be a star in Texas. I'm going, what state are you talking about?
She's talking about soon.
Yeah, but she got destroyed. She got destroyed.
Right.
But you want to talk about the messaging, Angela?
So, just as an entree to a larger point, so we actually did have a messaging challenge. We just were not on message. But what was really clear in this particular election is that the theme is cream. Cash rules everything around me. And so the Republicans had a message that won, and it was a nasty message that we saw in advertising all over this country. They won on that war. Because of where I live, Hogan, don't frown yet, because of where I live, I get the ads for Virginia. So I saw all of Ed Gillespie's ads, all of Mark Warner's ads. I saw these ads. They're terrible. And I think the messaging war was won with bad advertising.
Well, I live in South Carolina, and so those races are called before they even close. I mean, it's all, it's the reddest of the red states. Sure. But look, you're talking about, you just mentioned Rick Scott. He was upside down, his favorables, unfavorables. So was Mitch McConnell, down at favorables and unfavorables. And they were able to win those elections. But don't sit here and pretend like the Democrats' messaging and their commercials were all rosy, sunshine and gumdrops. I know, but I'm saying, you know, Kay Hagan outspent Tom Tillis 3-1. And my mama lives in North Carolina. I spent a lot of time there.
Those
They spent $120 million in that race. She outspent him 3-1, and those all weren't nice ads.
Well, no, that's I didn't say. I'm sorry, I didn't know that I said that it was only Republican nasty ads. I said nasty ads.
Let's go. Hold on, Jason. Lauren, then Jason.
The Republican messaging was united in what it was saying. The Democrats were running against their own party. You can't have a candidate that can't admit that she voted, whether or not she voted for the president. That's ridiculous.
And nobody's Kentucky's admitting they voted for Allison Grimes. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So first off, the thing about governor's races is you can call those to be part of national trends, but really they have to do with local problems. Nobody liked Rick Scott. Nobody liked Charlie Crist. Okay, I think Charlie Crist and Scott Brown should like run on a ticket one day of people who just switch parties and everything they do every week. Nobody liked anybody down there, so that means the incumbent's going to end up winning. There were lots of people who are unhappy with Brown in Maryland. That's why Hickenlooper is in trouble. On the governor's level, you have to look at what's happening in the state. You couldn't put what happened to Tom Corbett in a national wave conversation because it had to do with Jerry Sandusky. So I think, you know, the House and Senate, that has to do with Obama, the economy, and the fact that we're in the 6th year of a 2-term president. But these governor's races, you got to look local.
Tara, first of all, one of the things that people have not also recognized is that you had Bruce Rauner. He beats Pat Quinn, the incumbent Democratic governor in Illinois, the president's home state. And here's a piece. There were black pastors, prominent black pastors, Reverend James Meeks, Bishop Larry Trotter, and others who, because of the issue of education, they said Democrats had failed for 20 years. They supported Rauner in that. And every little vote counts, and you look at those numbers, that helped Rauner win.
Yeah, and there are a lot of historics here. I mean, for the most part. I mean, this is the first time, I think, since 1980 that Republicans have actually beat more than 2 incumbents. And this is the first time you have an African-American who has won both the House and the Senate. That's Tim Scott. Ever, not even party-wise. So I think you have a number of historic firsts. I think the other thing that we have to think about here and look at is the electorate has changed. Even the black electorate. I think that Democrats have for too long taken advantage of or taken for granted how black folks can and will vote. Independent. I'll use my dad as an example. He's the perfect voter in some ways because he's true and he's like an independent, and he doesn't vote straight ticket. He votes the issues, he votes the people, and that's what's happening more and more. If you look at if Democrats would even just start breaking down how black voters vote now, I don't think they're paying enough attention to that because they assume that most black voters are always going to vote Democrat. 1 in 5 now identify as being independents, and it was independents that I think Purdue got roughly 59% of independent voters in Georgia. So it is independents too that are swaying some of these races.
But even worse, there was no specific message to black voters that had to do with policy. It was all on emotion, putting Ferguson flyers out with no policy attached to it. There's a racial profiling bill. You can bring up a racial profiling bill. They didn't do that.
Angela Jason.
Some of those flyers, though, were not put out by the Democratic Party. Exactly. Some of the flyers were put out by color of
Georgia.
And I think that if we are honest, some of those things should appeal to us enough to go to the ballot box. The problem that I think that we have, or at least that I have as a black voter, is just because you say that we can't let Ferguson happen again, I need to know what Democrats or Republicans or independents are going to do to prevent that. And that's not an answer that we had.
Yeah, and I think another thing you got to remember is, the black folk that you have in Maryland, remember that's where Michael Seal is from. Black folk in Maryland are not black folk in Fulton County and Atlanta. Okay, so you have to remember when you're talking about African American voters, you really have to look at what's going on in these individual states and how they're individually being spoken to. I promise you that the Republicans didn't gain much with black voters in Georgia when the Secretary of State was denying the votes and denying the registrations of over 40,000 people all the way up until Election Day.
There was no ask for black voters. I mean, the idea that the Democratic Party, you can't just keep telling people to vote, vote, vote without a specific ask and without a specific thing that you're going to do or have done. So the Democratic Party totally failed.
It's not just
There's no results whatsoever.
It's a result issue, and I think far too long both parties have been focused on policy in a 30,000-foot view. It's not a result of what it actually does to a person at the local level. And there's so many times, especially in this upcoming election, I think is for 2016, this is kind of for us to prepare for that, and that is, I think more and more voters, black, white, Latino, Asian, they want results.
Right. Yeah,
they don't care who's doing it, who's driving the train. They want the train to get to the station.
Hold tight 1 second. I got to pay a few more bills right now. We come back.